योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचा मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि. On Monday, we have read up to 30 sutras of second chapter of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. But there has been a problem about Sutra 27. So we shall start today from 27 again. And the problem was, I told you, that Patanjali himself has not given what are the 7 states. So I had referred to Vyas Bhashya and tried to explain on that basis, and it was not very clear. So now I reverted to Swami Vivekananda's commentary, and there I am getting a better, clear picture. Those who are very specific about it, they can note down. If they have pen, pencil, 1, 2, 3, 7, I will explain now each one of them. So we go back to Sutra 27. Tasya saptadha pranta bhumihi pragya. Tasya connects us with previous sutra. So you have to go back to the previous. 26 sutra. Viveka khatir aviplava hanopaya. The upaya of removing all the miseries is unbroken practice of discriminative knowledge. Knowledge up to discrimination between Purusha and Prakriti has to be practiced unbrokenly in order to get rid of misery. Now this unbroken practice of discriminative knowledge, when practiced unbrokenly, has 7 states of progress, has 7 grades through which it passes. Tasya saptadha, 7, pranta bhumi, grades, pragya. So the pragya which you obtain in Viveka Khyati, Ritambara Tatra Pragya, that has 7 steps or 7 stages of progress. Now, I am reading from Swamiji's book and will explain from there. When this knowledge comes, it will come as it were in 7 grades, one after the other. And when one of these begins, we know that we are getting knowledge. The first to appear will be that we have known what is to be known. I have to explain this. We have not yet known the truth, but we feel sure that we are on the right path. That is the first step. Swamiji further explains, the mind will cease to be dissatisfied. While we are aware of thirsting after knowledge, we begin to seek here and there, wherever we think we can get some truth. And failing to find it, we become dissatisfied and seek in a fresh direction. All search is vain until we begin to perceive that knowledge is within ourselves. That is that first step. We become absolutely sure that knowledge is within ourselves. We have not yet got that knowledge, but we have become sure of the fact that knowledge is within ourselves. That no one can help us, that we must help ourselves. When we begin to practice the power of discrimination, the first sign that we are getting near truth will be that that dissatisfied state will vanish. We shall feel quite sure that we have found the truth and that it cannot be anything else but the truth. Then we may know that the sun is rising, that the morning is breaking for us, and taking courage, we must persevere unless the goal is reached. So the goal is not yet reached, but we become sure of 2 things, that knowledge is within and we are on the right track. Because our penetrative concentration has given us the discriminative, truthful knowledge. And we are getting it now. We are nearer to it. We are getting it. We become sure of this. So this is the first step. Being sure of our reaching the goal, being sure of our being on the right path. The second grade will be the absence of all pains. It will be impossible for anything in the universe, external or internal, to give us pain. We know that pain is the result of our ignorance, our ignorantly joining ourselves with nature, our joining the Atman with body, Indriyas, mind, buddhi, etc. And that is the cause of all the pain. No, painful things apparently may happen, but we will not feel pain at all. So this is the second step, that the discriminative knowledge is coming. We know now clearly that we are separate from Prakriti. We are coming to that state, but external things have stopped affecting us. That is the second stage. Number 2 point is, external things stop affecting us. So we do not feel any pain. This is the second step of discriminative knowledge when practiced unbrokenly. The third will be the attainment of full knowledge. Omniscience will be ours. Now, full knowledge we will get only at the end. But here we know fully well that there is pain. Pain becomes an objective something. We see there is pain, it does not affect us. So we become clearly aware of all the knowledge. Swamiji says omnipresent. All the knowledge is only this, that I am separate from Prakriti, and that Atman is of nature of pure consciousness, and all the knowledge is within the Atman. So it gives me a clear knowledge that the pain is objective, pain cannot affect me. I get full knowledge. This is the point number 3. Clear? Point number 3 is that we become almost, you may add, omniscient. We become clearly aware of our separateness from Prakriti, and so we become sure that pain will not come to us. Pain stopped coming in second, but in the third, we became sure that it will not recur. The fourth will be the attainment of the end of all duty through discrimination. This is a very, very major point. All the life, the greatest problem is that we feel duty. It is our duty to family, it is our duty to nation, it is our duty to ourselves, it is our duty to so and so. How many concepts of duty are there? Endless. It is our duty to earn money, it is our duty to support the family. The duties have no end. But here, we know that we are pure consciousness. We have nothing to do with Prakriti. We are separate from Prakriti. This discriminative knowledge is rising higher and higher. So it has come to this point. It is a great thing in life. We feel so much free. We are not yet reached Mukti, but we feel so much free. I have no duty. So, the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, he has no duty. He is acting with the impulse of love for the world, but no duty at all. So, this freedom from duty is the fourth state. Noted down? Next is number 5. Will come what is called freedom of the Chitta. We have to become free from Chitta itself. But a point comes where the mind feels free. Our mind itself feels I am free. I have nothing to do with the world. This is a peculiar reflection of our knowledge. In our final knowledge, we will have nothing to do with the mind. But at this point, the mind feels that it has become free. Mind does not connect us with the world. Mind feels it is free. So this not only duty, but no bondage of any type, the mind feels free. Those, anyway, those who have got the sannyasa, to them I appeal that the moment we get sannyasa, we feel we are free. So a mental feeling of freedom comes in the fifth step. Then sixth, the next will be that the chitta itself will realize that it melts away into its causes whenever we so desire. You remember an old sutra? De prati prasava heya sukshma. When these kleshas are sukshma, not strong, then we can resolve them into their causes. So chitta felt free, but now chitta vanishes into prakriti. Chitta, our separate mind vanishes into its cause, the primordial prakriti. That is the sixth state. Sixth state is when our chitta dissolves into prakriti, or as Swamiji says, we feel that any moment it will dissolve. Whenever we want, chitta will go away. That is the sixth state. And seventh is the final knowledge. Lastly means point number 7. We shall find that we are established in ourself. We have been alone throughout the universe. This is in Sankhya or Yoga terminology called Kaivalya. Kaivalya has totally different meaning in Sankhya and in Vedanta. Sankhya means I am free from Prakriti. That is called Kaivalya. Vedanta means I am one without a second. There is nothing separate from me. That is Kaivalya. Kaivalya means Kevala I am. Nothing else exists. Anyway, but we are now following Patanjali. So he says in the seventh, we become really free from Prakriti. That is the constant practice of discriminative knowledge has brought us to this, but it brings step by step. In 7 steps we achieve that. Slowly, what is happening is knowledge is being absorbed inside more and more. Same knowledge, but it is on the surface of the mind. It goes a little deeper, it goes still deeper, it goes still deeper. And when it goes the deepest, then our soul manifests itself in its consciousness only form. So that is the 7th step. I think I made it quite clear now. Let us proceed. 29. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhayo. Gone. Sorry, 28. After 27, we come to 28. Yoganga Anushthanad, Ashuddhikshaye, Jnana Dipti, Aviveka Khyate. So how this Viveka Khyate will come? Up till now in the first chapter we are told by Sampragyata Samadhi Viveka Khyate will come. Now he says that by following the 8 steps of yoga, here starts, as I said yesterday, on Monday, actual practice of Patanjali Yoga starts from this Sutra 28. Actual practice of Patanjali Yoga starts from this Sutra 28. It tells us that if we follow 8 steps of yoga, then yoga, angai steps, anushthanat by practice, ashuddhikshaye. All this wrong knowledge is impurity. All wrong knowledge is the cause of impurity, whatever you like to call it. So the impurities are vanishing gradually. If we practice all these 8 steps, it will result in the vanishing of impurities. And then what will happen? Jnana Dipti will get the full illumination of knowledge. Up to. A means up to. Viveka Khyate. Till this establishment in the discriminative knowledge about Purusha and Prakriti, up to this, our knowledge will get by the practice of 8 steps of yoga being told now. So this is the starting point. Samadhi or Samprajnata Samadhi will be told as the 8th step of this. So we cannot follow Samprajnata Samadhi also immediately. We have to follow those who are able to concentrate. Their thing has been over in the first chapter. Second chapter started by telling us those who are not able to concentrate have to practice 3 things. Tapas, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhana. Now Patanjali says for everybody, for the beginner, he has to start with 8 steps. So, this is the 28. Now in 29, he is naming and counting those steps. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhayoho, Ashtau, Angani. So he has counted them as 8, and these are the names. Yama, general rules. I repeat, Patanjali will tell in one of the sutras that these are for humanity. If we don't want to go down to animal level, everybody must practice these yamas, general rules for humanity. Niyama, special rules for those who want to succeed in yoga practice. So that is the difference between yama and niyama. Yama is the general rules for humanity if they don't want to go down below the level of humanity. Niyama is special rules for those who want to practice yoga and get freedom, get established in the discriminative knowledge. So that is niyama. Asana is a posture, I told you. I recounted a few asanas on Monday, but one of the asanas in which we can sit steadily. To meditate, to concentrate, we require a posture in which we can remain steady for a long time. I gave some examples on Monday. Swastikasana, Padmasana, Siddhasana, Virasana, etc. Not more. And here I pointed out not 84 asanas of the Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga is meant only to make the body stronger. And Sri Ramakrishna has given a danger signal also in that. If you practice Hatha Yoga too much, your mind will be riveted on your body. You will not be able to spiritually progress. Anyway, this is the warning. So asana means a particular posture in which I can sit steadily. Then pranayama. Pranayama is the control of the primordial energy called prana. Even our thinking is a form of energy. Our breathing is a form of energy. Our digestion of food is a form of energy. Our circulation of blood is a form of energy. So the mool energy called prana has to be controlled through the nearest form which is available to us, that is breathing. So starting from the control of breathing, how to control the prana, that is pranayama. And here again, like the Hatha Yogis or others, Patanjali has not given much importance except telling it is one of the steps. Then pratyahara. Let me explain pratyahara a little more. Prati means in the reverse order. Ahara means not food only. Aryate iti ahara. That which is taken in. Now what we take in? Through our eyes we take in the forms and color. Through our ears we are taking in sounds. Through our skin we are taking in the touch, soft, cold, hot, etc. Through our tongue we are taking in several tastes. Through our nose we are taking in smells. So this is what we are taking in. Now, we ask the Indriyas not to take in. We ask the Indriyas, don't go to objects at all. Remain inside, dissolve yourself into our mind, and then we will be able to dissolve mind in the Prakriti. So, checking Indriyas from going towards their objects is called Pratyahara. Pratyahara means mind has a tendency to go outside through the Indriyas. Indriyas themselves have a tendency to go outside. So, by our power gained through Yama, Niyama and Asana, these are steps, mind you. One cannot jump upon a step here at all. Will fall down if you suddenly want to jump on the fourth, fifth step. That is a great difference. Again, Hatha Yoga has 6 angas. Which are two missing? First 2. So unless we have this mental and moral orientation of Yama and Niyamas, we should not undertake any yoga. And then comes posture, and then pranayama, and then comes this pratyahara. Withdrawal of indriyas here from their objects of perception. Then where will they go? They have to go concentrate on one particular object. They have to be withdrawn from getting scattered towards all objects. Then comes dharana. So, the precondition for dharana is pratyahara, according to Patanjali. Ask the indriyas not to run away to hundreds of objects. Check them, check them. And we have sufficiently checked them, then he will explain this thing, but now because the names are given, I have to explain. Then comes dharana. Dharana, according to Patanjali, is fixing the mind on one spot to the exclusion of all other spots. Whether the spot is within the body or outside does not matter. And on Monday I will give the example about Dronacharya testing Pandavas and Kauravas. If somebody sees the tree, he is disqualified. If somebody sees the bird, he is disqualified. Arjuna sees only the eye of the bird which is to be shot. To the exclusion of bird, tree, etc., to the surrounding boys which are standing with him. This is called dharana. And as somebody has rightly pointed out, this is the central point of Patanjali Yoga. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara are the preparations. That is why here you will find they are described in this 5th chapter. Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi are described in this 6th chapter. Dhyana and Samadhi are the developments of this dharana. So dharana is the central point in Patanjali. I may tell you here, I told on Monday, the meaning of dharana in Vedanta or Bhakti Yoga is totally different. And one day I explained the process of meditation according to common man or according to Bhakti Yoga or Jnana Yoga. In that I told you that first starts with a conceptual knowledge. Concept. What is God? What is Atman? We get a concept. We know that God is Nirguna and Sagun. We know that God appears in many forms. We feel a relation with God. All this is called concept of God. And this conceptual knowledge is called dharana. And this develops into dhyana and samadhi. We shall come to that again when the topic of dharana comes. But here, dharana means, Patanjali says, concentrate on one point in space, whether in the body or outside. By concentrating on one point, he has described in the 1st chapter, we become penetrative. And we see the inside of that point. We see the subtle elements. Still we concentrate. And the meditation comes back to our own mind. we start perceiving the mind. Still concentrate. We perceive the separation of Purusha and Prakriti. We get all the knowledge. Ritambara Tattva Prajna. So this is Patanjali's method, and he has told Dharana is the central point. Dhyana, just now I described. The penetration, we perceive the inner things, that is dhyana. And when the full concentration comes, full penetrative concentration comes, we get to know what we are, Sampragyata Samadhi. And then we apply that knowledge and the power gained to stop any vritti from rising in the mind. That we shall see later on. But these are the 8 steps. Now we come to Yama. The 5 general, Patanjali is describing now each of these 8 steps. So first is Yama, Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha, Yamaha. I am repeating what I told on Monday. Ahimsa, not having any ill feeling towards anybody. That is ahimsa. That is the mental ahimsa. If we feel ill feeling towards somebody, we may do some injury to him. Mentally, physically, vocally. But ahimsa means not to feel any ill feeling towards anybody. Shall I explain it a little more? In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has repeatedly told Arjuna ahimsa. And this very Krishna asked Arjuna to kill Kamsa, to kill all the Kauravas. So ahimsa has nothing to do with the physical actions. He says, I have no ill feeling, or Arjuna has no ill feeling towards you people. But because you have become troublesome to the society, you have to be removed. And I know that killing you is killing only the body in which you are working. You are the souls, I know. So killing will not happen anything. Remember, ahimsa is a subtler truth. Then not only killing this or killing that, feeding ants with sugar and then cheating people. So ahimsa is a subtler mental phenomena, and Patanjali is asking, it is a general rule for all humanity. Satya, truthfulness, is the supreme preliminary quality to be practiced universally by humanity. Let me tell you a funny story here, you will understand. One boy wanted to marry a girl. So the father of the girl has invited that boy and is interviewing him. And he asks him about many of the bad habits. Do you smoke? No. Do you drink? No. Everything he says, no, no, no. The father is so much impressed. He says, then you have a perfect character. The boy says, no, I have one defect. I speak lies sometimes. So remember, all his no's are cancelled if he speaks lies sometimes. So, truthfulness is absolutely necessary. Then, asteya, I explained yesterday, to covet, I have some property, I am satisfied, but if I never get something, I want that. That is mental stealing. You may not actually steal, but you will mental stealing. If you covet which somebody else has, it is called stealing. And this humanity has to practice non-stealing. Brahmacharya. On this point I explained in detail on Monday, let me repeat, because many people's link had got cut at that point. So I am explaining again. Brahmacharya, 2 points you have to remember here. Because it is being made general rule for humanity, so let us add, Brahmacharya meaning is absence from sexual activity. Now because it is made for humanity, add as much as possible. as much as possible, having a control over your sexual urge or sexual activity is brahmacharya. Having accepted this as far as possible, now come to the other point, it is universal. If we allow this sex free scope, we are going down to animals. And the modern, so-called modern thought does not ask us to control. And humanity competes with animals. So if you have to live as human beings, we must have proper control over this sex activity. In the Gita, Bhagavan says, Dharma aviruddho kamosmi lokeshu bharatarshava. So, some forms of sex activity are permitted religiously for the householders. So they have to see proper time, place, condition. And I give you some stories also, Monday. How the Diti, Kashyapa's wife, compelled him to have sex in the evening and how all the demons were born. So, anyway, let me not proceed further. Time, place, condition has to be followed in the matter of sexual activity. And I quoted Prashna Upanishad to tell for the householders that is accepted as brahmacharya. Now, next is aparigraha. And there I told you aparigraha has two meanings. You can join both of them. Not to collect things more than necessary. Now, if you proceed in this way, you have to reduce your needs. That also becomes included. Otherwise, you'll say this also is necessary, that also is necessary. And I gave the example that in gentlemen's houses, parlors, as you enter the drawing room, there is a glass case and hundreds of things are kept there which he never uses. It distracts the mind. And why should man have that? Why should man not live his normal, regulated life? So, for general humanity, aparigraha means not to keep things more than necessary, and the other meaning. Other meaning is not to accept free gifts. I hinted something, the time was over. Let me tell the old people in India, the fresh batch does not know this. And foreigners other than India may not know this. As soon as India became independent in 1947, there was a businessman named Mundada, and he gave a jeep car freely to all the ministers and all the Indian ambassadors. I remember V.K. Krishna Menon was the ambassador or High Commissioner in London. T.T. Krishnamachari was the finance minister. And this Mundada gave a jeep freely to everybody. And then got done from them whatever he wanted. And that led to a very big scandal. Both Krishnamachari had to resign as finance minister. Menon had to come away from London. So if somebody gives you a free gift, your mind, my teacher used to say, your mind gets mortgaged. I will tell you a funny story, a very simple story with a sannyasi friend of mine. Because sannyasi is so pure in his mind, I will tell you this story. Let me not tell the name. One of my friends, he was in Mumbai and he was transferred to Mauritius. Now, these days we are using any clothes, but we used to color our clothes with the Gerua mud. Now, in foreign it may not be possible. So, colored cloth itself can be used. There were two sisters, very rich sisters, and big devotees very much helping the ashram. So they gave 2 shirts to this sadhu. You are going to Mauritius, we are made 2 shirts for you. of the colored cloth, you please take them. And he accepted. Simple thing. Now he could not remain in Mauritius for long due to some reasons. After 6 months, he comes back. And then he was transferred to other places, but he came back to Mumbai first. At this point, these ladies approach him. Simple matter, eh? They were the days of not MP3, only cassettes. So they brought one or two empty cassettes. And tell Swamiji, he was a very good singer. So Swamiji, will you sing some of your bhajans in these and record them in the cassettes and give us? Matter is very, very simple. But I remember clearly the sadhu exclaimed after those ladies went away, because I had accepted the shirts, I must sing. Thing is not very big, but see how accepting the gifts makes your mind mortgaged. Anyway, so I have given two examples, the worldly political example and a sadhu's example. So, aparigraha, now you can combine. If somebody gives you out of love and you require that, you can keep. So, join both the things. You are keeping only the necessary things and somebody lovingly is giving you. For this, there is a great example. Shall I repeat? It is from Sri Ramakrishna, the great master. There was a great devotee. Her name was Aghormani, but she was called Gopal's mother because she worshipped child Krishna and got his vision always. Now, Sri Ramakrishna was visiting Balram Bosse's house, one of his devotees, and he praised her to the ladies there. So they sent somebody to fetch her from her village. She came, and all the beautiful divine signs were seen on her, Sri Ramakrishna praising her and everything. Now she is going back. And the ladies of the house, out of their love and respect for her, they gave her several household items. And a bundle was made. And it was kept in the boat in which Sri Ramakrishna and his close devotees and this Gopal's mother were sitting. Sri Ramakrishna started looking at the bundle. In such eyes, she thought she should throw away because she has brought something. Sri Ramakrishna did not like it. Then when they reached there, she had equal respect for Holy Mother. So she went to Holy Mother and said, Gopal, that means Sri Ramakrishna is angry on this. Shall I throw away? She said, Mother, you have brought because you needed them. So you see the combination of the two. You have brought them because you needed them. What is the result? She kept one or two things needed by her and distributed the other things to the people in Dakshineshwar. This is the result. So the two instructions by Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother are not opposite. But this is the point. So we can combine both the ideas. Holy Mother said you have taken only because you need them. That means you should take only those which you need. So she kept one or two things needed and rest she distributed. Anyway, I think I talked about aparigraha at a length. Now, I was telling you that they are universal. Patanjali himself is telling now. Before proceeding to Niyama, about Yama especially, he is telling something. 31. Ete jati desha kala samaya anavachinnaha sarvabhaumaha mahavratam. Ete means these five. These five general rules are called Mahavratam, the great vows. Sarvabhauma, universal. Irrespective of jati, desha, jati means where you are born, desha means where you are living or what is the place, kala, what time, samaya, condition, anavachinnaha, not checked by them, not checked by Jati Desha Kala Samaya, but universal. Not that under this condition this is allowed, that condition this is allowed, no. Universal completely. These are the things to be followed. So, Patanjali himself has told that these yama are general rules to be followed by humanity, irrespective of whether they are born, what is the time, what is the space. They are Mahavratam. Then he comes to Niyamas. About Niyamas, he is not telling them. He is telling this only about Yama. That means that he is making the Yama as the general rules for humanity. And with this, we have to understand, as I told you, Brahmacharya Parikara and everything. Now we come to Niyama. Special rules for those who want to practice yoga. Shaucha, Santosha, Tapaha, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhanani Niyamaha. Immediately you will remember that last three of this, Tapa, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhanani, he had quoted in the beginning of the chapter, telling it necessary to practice concentration. And now he has come to 10 qualities, out of which these are the three. Shaucha. Shaucha means cleanliness, outside and inside. Swamiji here explains, under certain circumstances, the external cleanliness may not be possible. Internal is important. Whenever possible, both cleanliness should be there. You see, it makes the mind orderly. What is cleanliness? Let me define. I will give an example. Your wristwatch or your watch has stopped because some dirt is jamming it. You take to the shop, the mechanic opens it, and with a small blower, he just drives away that dust. Where that dust has gone? In the room. And you don't feel dirty. When it is in the watch, it is dirty. You are sweeping the room and you put it in the dustbin. It is no more dirty. In the room, it is dirty. So anything in an unwanted place, everything should be in the place meant for it. That is the cleanliness. And it produces such an orderliness of the mind that one is able to proceed. Same is the condition with our thoughts. Irrelevant thoughts, generally we call bad thoughts, not necessarily bad. Now we are in the classroom and we are thinking of cricket. So, this is called non-cleanliness. Thought should be directed, proper thoughts at proper time, feelings, thoughts, external, everything. If you keep about Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Saradanji made one mental experiment sitting in his room. Why has kept this thing here? Why is that thing there? And then he found out nothing could have been kept in a better place. And if somebody displaces, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, keep it in that place. So this is cleanliness, tremendous orderliness of the mind. Then comes Santosha. Santosha means contentment. Now contentment about what and discontent about what? Shall I start from a story about discontent? You know the name Socrates. And what Socrates did? In his days, government cared for everything about the men. They don't have to bother, they don't have to work. Their living, education, everything the government will manage. So people used to roam here and there freely, chit-chat, do this or that. Socrates used to go to every man and ask him question. Why are you born? What is the aim of life? where we shall go. And by this method of questioning, he made some earnest disciples like Plato and others. But the common humanity, which had become accustomed to lead a so-called free life, they became disturbed. And they complained to the government. Government was not a king in those days, a council. They complained to the council that Socrates is spreading discontent among people. Then there were psychology professors or doctors. They said that because this man is dissatisfied within, he is spreading dissatisfaction. You know what punishment was given? He was asked to drink poison. The hanging or shooting was not there in those days. Death punishment means asking him to drink poison. And Socrates said, if this is the cause, I am ready to drink it dry. Now his disciple Plato has put in words what Socrates could have replied, or what he replied in a way. You remember? Please take down the sentence, very important. A Socrates dissatisfied is better than a pig satisfied. A Socrates dissatisfied is better than a pig satisfied. So, now understand. Patanjali is asking us to have contentment. Now I will define. I have given the example first. Satisfaction or contentment about what the world has given me. If the world has given me, the world has asked me to live a poor life, I am living a poor life. If world has given me riches, I am living a rich life. So satisfaction about things the world has given me and dissatisfaction about what I am. Unless this dissatisfaction is there, we will never progress spiritually. So this contentment is not about, I am content. Whatever the Lord has given me, I am content. No. You are content about your external life, but internally you are struggling to improve. So, Santosha means contentment about what the world has given you, tremendous discontent about what you are. It does not stop in discontentment. It will achieve the perfect contentment when you realize the truth. But till then, discontentment is as much important as contentment. So Patanjali's Santosha, contentment, should be taken in this light. That contentment about things world has given me, discontent about my own condition of life, and I want to improve. Anyway, so Santosha is necessary. Why? Again I'll tell you the in-between. Our energy should be spent in improving our own standard of mind. Our energy should not be spent or wasted in improving the worldly condition. This is contentment. If we are discontent, one thing is mind is restless. Secondly, we want this, we want that, we want this, we want that. Till then we are not contented. Our energy is being frittered away in outside things. But if you develop a quality of contentment, I am tempted to tell you two stories. It will take time. I was in Rishikesh. Long back, 78, 79 I am talking. And I was following the Madhukari method. That is, a sannyasi goes to the householder's door and says Narayan Hari. The householder feels he should give him something. He goes to 5 or 6 such houses and his stomach is filled, he comes back. This is called Madhukari. Now, Madhukari in a developed form is called Karatala Bhiksha. That means I am not carrying any vessel also. I went to a house, a small, newly constructed house. And I said, Narayan Hari. The lady came out, seeing me without any patra, vessel. She kept a thali full meals, plate, and kept it in the veranda for me to eat. Now the owner was a businessman. So he came back from his shop when I was still eating. He entered inside and I heard or felt he is scolding the wife that you have given food, you have not given dakshina. It is the customary in people to give food and then give some money or something as dakshina. So she came out with a 2 rupee note. 78, 2 rupees was not a small thing. And she said, please take this. I said, Mother, you have given me what I wanted. This is not necessary. She thought I am feeling contracted because it should not tax them. And she uttered the immortal words, I would say. Maharaj, please don't feel contracted. God has given us in Hindi, Bharpur diya hai. Can we translate Bharpur in English? Full and overflowing, Bharpur. I have not heard this word throughout my life. From the richest people, the big people, whether it is, I don't want to take names, but whether it is American or Indian or very rich people, they are not contented. But this lady said, God has given us more and enough. I felt happy. I did not take that 2 rupees, of course. While coming back, a bad thought entered me. That after all, they have something, a small new house. Suppose they did not have to that. Next day, by chance, I went at quite a distance. And it was, in Indian people will understand, the Harijan colony. That means the sweepers colony, their all houses were of mud and half height only. Only the women and small children sleep inside. The people sleep outside on cots. From a distance, I saw one brick-built house. And in front of that brick-built house, 2-3 ladies also were there. So I thought this colony will not be able to give me anything. But when I have come, I will visit that brick-built house and then go away to some other place. I went there, I said Narayanari, and the lady gave me one big chapati or roti, if you know, the uneven bread, and some vegetable or something on it. I ate it there. Now, one of the lady visitors, she said, will you not come to our house? So I had to go to that half mud house also. She also gave me a chapati and something. And while I was eating, she remembered something. And in a corner of her house, there was a small paper packet. And she took out 1 rupee from that and gave it to me. I said the same thing. Mother, this is not necessary. Food is enough. And she uttered the same words. Maharaj, don't feel contracted. God has given us more and sufficient. Bharpur diya hai. And it was proved. Because she asked me, will you come on Monday? I said, what Monday? Sunday only he will get something. That means daily wage earner. And his wife is telling me, God has given us sufficient and more. So this is, anyway, because I remembered those examples I wanted to share with you, feeling of contentment about what God has given you, about what world has given you. But you have to improve all the time. Santosha, I have described. Tapa. Now, Tapa I had already seen. Tapa, Swadhyaya, Ishvara, Pranidhan. Let Patanjali describe later on. Here is naming them only. So, Tapa means the feeling of austerity. The feeling, I will say love of hardship. If you want to practice anything, any sadhana, anything to, I will give my formula on that. I used to tell this to the students, boys. If you are bent upon enjoyment, that enjoyment also will slip away from you and you can never improve. If you are bent upon improvement, enjoyment will follow you. You will improve, enjoyment will follow you. Or enjoyment may not be proper word, happiness will follow you. If you are bent upon improvement, you will improve, happiness will follow you. If you are bent upon enjoyment, you will not improve, and that enjoyment also will be taken away from you. It will slip away. I think I explained tapa in this way. Then, Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya normally means two things, but Patanjali seems to mean only one. One meaning is study of scriptures. The other is what is called mantra japa, or in every religion, repeating some holy text is called Swadhyaya. That trains up the mind. That trains up the mind, that trains up the tongue, that trains up our mouth. And so, Swadhyaya is a special rule if you want to become a yogi. And that is why I said all the religions prescribe this repetition. I have seen amongst people known to me, whether they followed Islam or Christianity, that a rosary and they were repeating things. So, this repetition of things, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhan, now this has produced some difficulty here. When Ishwar Pranidhan was given as Kriya Yoga, Ishwar Pranidhan, there are many meanings. Two meanings are relevant. One is dedication of the fruits of work to God. Second is profound meditation on God. So in the first chapter, we had mean Ishwar Pranidhan, profound meditation. But when it was given as a Kriya Yoga, we thought it to be only dedication of fruits to God. Now here a difficulty has arisen. Should we take this meaning or that meaning? Because it will be told that if you are perfect in Ishvara Pranidhan, you will get Samadhi. That first chapter thing is repeated here again. Anyway, so any meaning or both meanings we can take. Because we are not yet able to meditate, that is the difficulty. We are preparing ourselves. So in our preparation, Ishvara Pranidhan should mean dedication of the fruits of work to Ishvara, our God. Here, let us forget the difficulty. Because Patanjali's God is a full fruits to a special Purusha is very difficult to understand. But a Bhakta or a Jnani who takes God to be the supreme reality, who takes God to be Samashti, the totality of all souls, who takes God to be the Srishti Sthiti Pralaya Karta, he can easily, if he practices, dedicate the fruits of work to God. By cultivating the thought, I am not the doer, God is the doer. And this, Patanjali says, will lead to perfection directly. You need not practice other yoga angas at all. That shall come in proper time. But here, special rules are Shaucha, Santosha, Tapa, Swadhyaya, and Ishvara Pranidhan. They are the special rules prescribed by Patanjali in order to go forward in the practice of yoga, and then asana will follow in the next class. Om Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacha Malam Sharirasya Cha Vaidyakena Yopa Karottam Pravaram Muninam Patanjalim Pranjaliranatosmi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.